Good morning, gamers. It's Thursday, and I have a lot to talk about with World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy, and why I'm playing Final Fantasy over World of Warcraft, and all my WoW friends are mad that I won't come back. They're really mad at us, aren't they, JoJo? And I'm gonna try to address a lot of the reasons why I've been playing Final Fantasy recently, and no, it's not just the corruption system.
Why can't I do damage? What is this? What is my infinite stop? What is this? What is this?
But also some of the other things that are kind of making me want to come back to WoW. We'll see. 15 years ago, I started playing World of Warcraft. I've played through the good, I've played through the bad, and I've experienced some of the best moments of my MMO career.
Go beyond Super Saiyan.
And this!
Come on,
This
fucking
to
kill
go
it!
even further! Let's go!
And in those 15 years of playing World of Warcraft, there were always times where I took breaks from the game to play other games, or there were times where I disagreed with the story direction and gameplay changes. But there's never been a time where I've completely quit WoW to play a completely different MMORPG. When I quit playing Battle for Azeroth towards the end of 8.1, it was after my guild had disbanded. Finding 20 players who were of the same mindset, skill set, and goal set as your own became more difficult as the player base subsided each day, until we finally called it quits during the Battle of Dazar'alor raid. During this time, I was very unsatisfied with how Shadow Priest felt and played, Azerite armor, Titan forging and socketing, in particular the substat weights, how the in-game story was being presented as compared to the short stories and novels, and the ridiculous layers of RNG required to obtain my best in slot gear, so that I can compete at a level of the game that I wanted to compete at. In came Final Fantasy XIV with fat cats, cat girls, and... Oh, there's also this incredible trailer with one normal katana guy and some dude with a wagon that also has a katana. Low-key though, I think WoW is better cinematics. Jokes aside, when I started playing Final Fantasy XIV and patch 5.1, the game had already been out for 9 years, and holy crap was there so much to do. Every day that I logged into the game, I was presented with new content that I didn't even know existed, such as roulettes, a great way to level by the way, or treasure maps, or level synced raids, or hunts, or random storylines to unlock emotes. The list goes on. But in my honest opinion, this was to be expected of a game that had been out for 9 years, and I would expect the same thing from World of Warcraft. Right? Actually, I'm blown away by the amount of old content in Final Fantasy XIV that still matters or is still playable. Pretty much any old raid or dungeon allows you to scale down to the level and item level of the raid or dungeon. Would I ever go back and do an old Heavensward raid scaled down to level 60 with the minimum item level? Absolutely not. But the point is, the agency is there. Could you imagine getting your guild in World of Warcraft together to go clear old raids like Icecrown Citadel or Sunwell Plateau or even old Karazhan? That would be super cool. While old content is cool, it's not necessarily the reason I play MMOs. I like playing video games competitively, and I want to push myself on the leaderboards. In World of Warcraft, we have Warcraft logs, so I was pleased to hear that Final Fantasy logs was a thing created by the same person. With the corruption system on the horizon, I doubled down on my commitment to playing Final Fantasy XIV as competitively as I could. And boy, what a journey this has been. It's kind of like that old saying of you never know what you have until it's gone. Outside of my real life friends who had been trying to get me to play Final Fantasy XIV for a long time, I didn't know anyone in the game, especially not anyone in the upper echelon of Final Fantasy XIV. By the end of 5.1, I had gotten a bit of exposure to Savage raiding, and too much exposure to Phase 1 of the Epic of Alexander Ultimate. When I finally did find a community that had similar goals, mindsets, and skill sets, Final Fantasy XIV became even more and more fun for me. Reasonable to obtain best in slot, paired with bad luck protection and my DPS being dependent upon my gameplay and crit RNG, rather than I can't do damage because the item that I need didn't drop, or the item I needed dropped but it wasn't corrupted, or the item that I needed dropped and has corruption but didn't have the correct corruption, or The item that I needed dropped and has the correct corruption, but it's not the right tier of corruption. Now, before I get flamed with, but Tyci, they added a vendor for corruption. Yes, I know that. But the fact of the matter is that even the vendor has an RNG mechanic to it, and at the end of the day, I don't want to wait months for all these layers of RNG to compile, or I can finally do what I've been waiting to do, raid competitively. Which brings me to my final point. While I've been able to push myself farther in Final Fantasy XIV than I ever have in WoW in terms of my rankings and FF logs, there are still things that I wish Final Fantasy had that WoW does. The thing I miss most from World of Warcraft is Mythic Plus. And one other important thing I miss about WoW is how competitive the game is. I want to be able to compete for a world first or compete in MDI in WoW, but I also want to enjoy playing the MMO that I'm playing, which leaves me at Final Fantasy XIV. I look forward to trying out Shadowlands, and I would really like to compete in Shadowlands, but if my damage and my rankings are determined by this multi-layered slot machine, then I'm perfectly fine with raiding in Final Fantasy XIV. I love World of Warcraft and I love Final Fantasy XIV. And at this point, I just want what's best for both games. So for now, I'm going to continue playing Final Fantasy XIV until WoW makes substantial changes to a lot of the things that I haven't been enjoying. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment or message me on Twitter or DM me on Discord, and I'd be happy to answer them for you. Or just talk about either game. I hope for my first YouTube video, this wasn't too painful to watch and some of the edits and sound and stuff aren't weird. And for every subscriber we get, I will give JoJo one belly rub. Thanks for watching and happy raiding.